My next guest started out his career at the age of 19, following in my footsteps at Radio 1, actually, and he went on to present TV shows, including The Late Late Breakfast Show and That Show Business and loads of others, whilst also having a career in motor racing. Since then, his career has taken yet another turn. He now runs a helicopter business, filming aerial shots from the likes of Top Gear, Take That, and the Ascot racecourses. Mike Smith. Mike, welcome.
Tony, good morning.
Nice to have you with us.
It's lovely to be here.
Maybe feel really old there, saying that record there I used to play to you when you were about 9 years old, is that right?
Yes, that makes you sound like a slightly dodgy person, doesn't it? But in fact, you were...
When you were sitting on my knee.
You were... Steady? We can edit that one out. When I was 9, I listened to pirate radio. So we're talking now 1964.
Yes.
And I was listening. I was living Somerset in Northern Ireland, and I was listening to the pirates on both the East Coast and the West Coast, because you had ones that were going up the Irish Sea as well as on the North Sea.
Yeah.
And I just remember hearing you. You know, you were the Tamla Motown man. You were the one who really introduced me to that. And I have to say that
that's very sweet of you.
No, but those things shape a child's life. You shaped my life. You shaped what I wanted to do.
So what you're saying is the way you've turned out unresponsible, is that it?
It's entirely your fault. Yeah.
Let's go back to the...
I turned into this miserable old git. I walked into the toilets here this morning and the roller towel was all over the floor. Yeah, this morning.
Was it really?
Someone's pulled it all out. One of those spooks who works in this building has been in there and tried to murder someone and pulled the roller towel all out of it. And I found myself turning into this 56-year-old miserable git.
Well, I'm a 68-year-old miserable old git. So, but let's go back to the early days. Did you always want to be... I mean, I've always felt, you went into television, you had a very successful career in TV, but I've always thought, really, your love is in radio.
Yeah,
it always has been in radio. And
I'm a big listener.
But you sort of left radio, didn't you, to go into television, where the big money is, actually.
Well, in those days, when I left, it was the late 80s, and in those days, there was a big division between radio and television. And if you probably remember the troubles you had. If ever you tried to plug a TV programme you'd made on Radio 1, they would tell you off. And then, when I worked at Capital Radio at the start of the 80s, we weren't even allowed to admit that television existed. The management told us never talk about what you've seen on TV or what you're doing on TV. So there were two different worlds. Now it's all different because everything's coming together, everything's converging, and it's all multimedia. But then they were different worlds. So yes, I had to take a decision that I was being offered some great jobs in TV, and I had to leave radio to do that.
I mean, you started in hospital radio, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
So where did it all go wrong?
Well, it's your fault again.
You were on hospital radio, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in hospital radio in the early 70s. So I listened to you in 64. Radio 1 came on the air in 67. I was now 12 years old. And by the time I was 15, 16, I realised that I wanted to do something in entertainment. It was either going to be bad acting and bad stage management in professional theatre. I'd actually played a Chinese policeman in Aladdin. Can you imagine this? The first blonde Chinese policeman. But I wanted to be I knew it was going to be entertainment, and that's the way I headed. So I just looked for where the work was, and eventually I managed to find a job through devious means at Radio 1 in 1974 when I was 19, and you were a massive big Radio 1 star, and I was the T-boy. I used to make the programme trailers for 12 quid a week. Yeah. That's what I did.
And then you eventually worked your way on to the station, and of course, very successfully took over the breakfast. Who did you take over the breakfast show from? Was that?
From Mike Reid.
Mike Reid.
I'd sat in for him a couple of times during 85, during the Live Aid period and stuff. And Johnny Beerling was the controller then. Yeah. He was the guy who gave me my first £12 a week job when he was an executive producer, and I was. So Johnny, when he was controller, he'd been trying for ages to get me to take over the breakfast show, and eventually I said, look, I do it. I'll do it for 2 years. I've always wanted to do it, so I did it for 2 years, and that was it.
Why did you only want to do it for 2 years?
Because I'd done so much early morning broadcasting. I had been at Capital Radio on the Breakfast Show. I'd done the Breakfast Time programme at the BBC Television, which meant getting up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I'd done about 10 years or more of early mornings, and I just wanted a break. Plus, I knew that with television then, all the studio days were long. They all finished at 11 o'clock at night. So quite how Chris Moyles does it, I do not know. Quite how Tarrant, I think, largely managed to do it, burning the candle at both ends with the help of some friendly alcohol.
I think, I think some people are morning people. I mean, I love the early mornings. Some people aren't. You're not naturally an early morning person?
Yes, I am. I love early morning. I mean, flying, which I do now, we love getting up early and going somewhere to shoot pretty pictures in that dawn light. And I'm at my best in the morning. I'm at my worst in in the evening at the end of the day now. But that's largely because I'm 56.
You built up an on-air sort of relationship with Noel Edmonds on television, really, with the Late Late Breakfast Show and things like that. Was that your first love, really, television, do you think?
No, I don't think so. It just fell, honestly, I wasn't trying too hard to get into television. I remember writing to the BBC when they... I used to love writing letters, and I was thinking today, all these kids... I'm looking at the headlines today, and it's about the A-level results, and I know that for every smiling child, there's at least 2 or 3 who are not smiling.
Did you go to university?
I didn't go to... No, I have 4 O-levels.
Isn't it funny? Everybody... No, we're saying...
I have 4 O-levels. I failed my A-levels. And I want to say to any kid who's listening today who's been crying buckets of tears this morning, get with it. You can do it. I truly believe that you can come from nowhere, because I have, and you can make something with your life if you really want to do it.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
I used to nag you. I used to try... I wanted to sit in on your show and see how you worked when I was first at Radio 1 and I was 20 years old. I wasn't going to let you do that.
No, you were younger and far more beautiful.
But I used to do that, and I'd do anything to take cups of tea and coffee into Fluff and to Johnny Walker and people like that. You've got to show enthusiasm for the job.
You're absolutely right.
And if you are enthusiastic, you will survive. And
why is it more people don't say this? I mean, I say that I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and I say that to her. She's not bothered about university. She wants to go into singing, dancing. It's all personality. It's all having that, sort of focusing on something, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've got to learn how to do the groundwork first.
Yes, of course you have.
And if you look at the great artists of today, whether they're music or acting or producing or directing, the great artists of today have the background in how to do it, right? The ones who are fly-by-nights who you forget about next week, they have no background.
And there are some jobs, obviously, you do need university for, like lawyer, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, professions like that. Yes. But I quite agree, I absolutely agree with you. Those kids who haven't made the grade, move on. Yeah. And it's not the end of the world, is it?
Yeah. No, I mean, everybody says, oh, well, the great entrepreneurs in the world, they made all their money and they all went to university. That's just a lie. They didn't. Most of the great entrepreneurs in this country didn't even go through secondary school properly. They dropped out. They had an idea and they went with it. And to get there, you've got to be prepared to struggle. Now, I think that these days, because of the way the media works and because of what these kids see on the screen these days all the time, they think it's so easy just to step into that and to get experience with having done nothing. But you've got to do the groundwork. You've got to go and scrub out the toilets. Absolutely. You've got to go and make burgers at the burger bar. You've got to do those things.
Right, Mike Smith is my special guest. I want to get into helicopters and do the cracking gag about I bet you're glad the idea took off. And but before that, Texas Midnight Runners. And come on, Eileen, right here at BBC.
Oh, I remember this on Top of the Pops. They got this one wrong, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
They did on this one.
Oh, no, it was Jockey Wilson. They put up Jockey Wilson instead of Jackie Wilson.
That's the one, yeah.
Good old Top of the Pops.
Mike Smith is my special guest. I gather you've been driving since you were 8 years old.
Yeah, my dad taught me to drive, sitting on his lap, going around an old airfield in an old Ford Consul, I think it was, something like that. So he would do the pedals because I couldn't reach them, but I'd do the steering and the gear change because it was a column shift. And that's how I learned to drive.
Your dad was in motoring, wasn't he?
No, my dad he worked at Ford. My dad was an area manager for Ford. We moved every 3 years. I thought he was on the run at one point. But every 3 years he moved to a different territory for Ford. Yeah. So I've lived all over the country, all over the UK. My mother's Irish. I have 2 passports. I'm Irish and I'm English. And that's been a quality that I've been able to pull on in my broadcasting, because you know, if you're going to broadcast to the UK, you need to know what's going on in the UK and where places are and all that stuff. And you know all those problems that you run into with the Welsh, Tony, don't you?
Of course, absolutely.
Overpronouncing their town names.
Absolutely right as well.
I still have that problem, despite the fact I've been there several times.
I can never understand where the Welsh actually, where they have all the signs in Welsh and hardly anybody speaks the language.
Have you heard that story about the sign that was up for 2 years in Cardiff?
No,
and it was in the 2 languages. One said hospital this way, and then just the second language above it was the Welsh language, the primary language, and it was in Welsh. It was up there for 2 years before someone realised that it didn't actually say that. It said, "I'm on holiday for 2 weeks. I'll reply to your email when I get back." And what it was the guy...
Is that true?
It's a true story. The guy at the council had commissioned this road sign, and there was a bloke they sent it off to do the Welsh sign writing, and of course he got a bounce back on the email, and that became the thing on the sign. Nobody checked it. So for 2 years that sign sat there.
That's lovely. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
17 years old, you took up motorsport. I mean, is that what you really wanted to do, the motor racing?
Oh, God, my heroes, I know where I was the day that Jim Clark died in 1968 in a Formula 2 race in Hockenheim, and I was in my auntie's kitchen in Suffolk. My passion has always been motorsport, and I'm still now. I'm like, we're filming at McLaren. I'm so proud of the work I do now, and we do a lot of work for McLaren. I was filming we were filming Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton last year, and these things mean a lot to me. Even though most of the time I don't get to go on them, but I filmed Lewis going around Silverstone last year in Ayrton Senna's McLaren Formula 1 car, the old turbocharged one, which was like a rocket ship, and to be there on that day was very special.
It always amazed me with Radio 1 the way we went to Brands Hatch and they gave us these cars to race round with,
and you wrecked them.
They were dangerous.
Yeah, but you wrecked them, didn't you?
Absolutely.
See, 1970. Well, okay, when was it? 75.
Yeah.
I remember Mallory Park, Leicestershire, the lake. You were in your motor skiing mode. You were going round, and the Wombles were there, and the Bay City Rollers turned up, and all their fans invaded the lake. And you were rescuing them.
They came in by helicopter. I was being driven around the lake with a Womble. A Womble was actually steering it. It was the most bizarre moment of my life, I think. It was weird. I think it's on YouTube. I think there is a bit on YouTube.
I was your warm-up act that day. I was 20 years old. I wasn't a DJ on Radio 1, but I was the warm-up for the roadshow. And I couldn't believe what was going on. It was just hilarious. There were 40,000 people trying to get into a place that was designed for about 15,000 people.
All the Radio 1 DJs seemed to think they were great racing drivers, apart from David Hamilton and myself, who made a point of going very slowly, which annoyed everybody else. And I think Noel at one time wanted to be a racing driver.
Well, you know how I met him. I never knew. I mean, we grew up, it turns out, it was 6 or 7 years apart, but we grew up just a few miles apart. I met him because he'd been talking about motor racing on the air when he was doing the breakfast show at Radio 1. And I was about 19 years old. I had a racing car. So I rang him up. He'd done a couple of the events that you'd done. I managed to get through to his office and say to him, look, do you want to come and race a real car? So we did a little deal where he came and raced the car. And he turned up on the Sunday morning. This was 1973, I think it was, or 74, at Brands Hatch. And within 2 laps of practice, he'd written it off.
God, really?
My pride and joy was in the crash barrier at Clearways, wrecked. And he was so embarrassed about it. And that's how I got to get into broadcasting, because in late August 74, he was doing a TV show with the Osmonds for a week at BBC Television Theatre. It was his big break in television, and he asked me to be his driver. And he paid me £60 for the week to drive him around, to get him out of the crowds and back home and all that stuff. That's how I got into broadcasting.
Why was it you loved motorsports, so would you have liked to have been a driver? Or was it, did you realise were you not good enough for it?
No, I was being paid to race as late as 88. I was in the BMW Works team in the British Touring Car Championship, and I was one of their drivers. But then I had the helicopter accident. Then I formed my own racing team, and actually that team, we went on and won the British Touring Car Championship. But we had all sorts of sponsorship problems with dodgy, dangerously. Motor racing is full of these strange people, and so I hardly raced in the championship year. I did one race, but would I go back to it? Not really. No, I don't. I've done all the circuits. I've won at Hockenheim, I've won at Nürburgring, I've still got a lap record at Brands Hatch. They're nice things to have, they're trophies to have, and they're things I did. And that's what I love about my life, Tony, is I've just done loads of stuff that I wanted to do.
You certainly have. Tell you what, we'll come on to talk about what you're up to at the moment with the helicopters and everything, but here's Lamar, and If There's Any Justice, right here at BBC
Not
Radio
Lamar,
Berkshire.
then. This is Lamar, is it? Not Lamar.
What did I say?
You said Lamar, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
But not Lamar, as in Kajagoogoo.
No.
Where's he gone?
Heaven knows. Lovely seeing you again, actually, Mike, and I really mean that. And,
just put the rifle down, would you?
No, I haven't seen you for a long, long time. And but what you're doing now, of course, you had that helicopter crash with Sarah, of course.
Yes.
How is Sarah, by the way?
She's in good form.
Lovely.
Happily married we are. We've known each other for 30 years.
I thought you were going to say happily married. And I thought I didn't realise you'd split up. No, of course you haven't.
No. So we've known each other for 30 years. I mean, we met at the end of the first London Marathon in March 1981. And it's been great. It's great.
Fantastic.
A lovely time, and it's I think that's probably why I'm not working in radio, is that I met and fell in love with someone, and when that happens, other things start to take a bit of a back seat.
Yeah, could
be. We were both extremely busy when we first met.
Yeah.
She was all over the place with the kids' TV and the Blue Peter and then the swap shop and all that stuff. And I think eventually you compromise and you have to, otherwise the relationship can't survive. So
you've gone into helicopters. And, the helicopter business. Explain what that is exactly.
Well, it was an idea I had. And it was because I've always loved seeing aerial shots in movies and TV programs. I just think they're the most wonderful things for telling a story. And I wanted to do them. And it was very expensive. And whenever I've been involved in television programs before and you try to do a helicopter shoot, it's been very expensive and it always goes wrong because the equipment didn't work. I found a way of doing it that doesn't happen. And we've now been going for 8 years. And when I say we, I've got some extremely talented people who work for me. And so Captain Jonathan Penny and Monica Wyatt, who's a camera operator, they're sitting now waiting to go and film a James May programme down in Kent today. So we'll set off and we have gyro-stabilised cameras, they give you this amazing steady shot, no matter how deep you go with the zoom on the shot. So you can be a long way from a target and shooting it and getting a beautiful picture. And we just freelance around working for any TV programme that wants us. So in the next couple of weeks we'll be working for Sport Relief as David Walliams does his new challenge down the River Thames.
So what's he doing there?
He's decided this time, he must be slightly mad, to swim the entire length of the River Thames from its source to the Thames Barrier, which is 220 miles.
So where its source is?
The source is Lechlade, not far from Swindon, Cirencester Way. And then, of course, it comes all the way past Oxford and down through this territory. It'll come along through Bray and Maidenhead and so on. And it's going to take a week from September the 5th until September the 12th to do it.
What's he going to do when he comes to the locks? Is he going to nip out and then go round them?
No idea. I think the first part, because you can't swim the entire length of the Thames. The source is like a dribble. I know because I once peed into the source of the Thames. Have you ever done that?
Well, no, I haven't.
Well, because I live on the Thames in London, and we went.
Well, I'm not going to swim in that anymore. How long ago was that?
There's worse than my pee in there. I could tell you a few stories. But I live on the Thames in London, and we were out in the countryside with some friends one day, and they said, "Oh, let's go to the source of the Thames. It's just up here near the pub." So we walked across the fields and got to the source, and all it is this dribble coming out of the rocks. Yeah. And I said, "This is ridiculous. I have to pee into the Thames." So I did.
So David Walliams is starting at the source, and then where does it actually end?
Thames Barrier.
At the Thames Barrier.
Yeah. So he's going to swim right the way through the middle of London.
And you're going to film it.
We're going to film it. We're going to film him one day. We're going to fly him along the route the day before it, so he can, with his trainer, so he can go, "What the hell have I let myself in for?" And then we're going to film his start, and they're going to go with him for the whole week, and we'll pick up the end as it goes through London. And I do wish him all the best. The Thames is not the most pleasant river in the world. The best bit will be through your territory. Sarah's involved with Target Ovarian Cancer. The woman who started that lives at Bray, and we were in her back garden last Sunday, and one of her neighbours is Rolf Harris, who you were talking about yesterday. This is like 6 degrees of separation. And Rolf Harris dropped in and started singing in her back garden right by the Thames, and he was singing Two Little Boys and all the hits. And there was this bizarre sight of all these English people dressed up for the afternoon and boats going past the end of the garden, stopping and reversing back because they couldn't quite believe what they'd seen and heard.
Did he have the old wobble board as well?
No, he didn't. He brought an accordion. And Rolf's fantastic. But, I imagine him standing on Maidenhead Bridge doing a lovely little song for David Walliams swinging underneath for Sport Relief.
And this is for the TV show that's going on, I guess, on BBC, is it?
Yeah, well, the Sport Relief's been pulled forward slightly because of the Olympics, and they're now starting to film stuff and different challenges.
Fantastic.
But I mean, David Walliams must be a superman if he thinks he can do this.
Well, incredible. He'll do it though, won't he?
Well, look, he did the channel, and we've filmed a lot of those. We filmed Eddie Izzard's marathon running, where he did a marathon a day.
I thought that was incredible. I don't know how anybody could do that.
And the guy is, again, a superhero for doing it. Yeah. And Christine Blakely, when she water skied across the English Channel, which is one thing to do on a calm summer's day, but actually it was February.
Do you go on the cameras yourself?
Sometimes I do. Yeah. I have Monica, who's the camera operator, is way more experienced than I am.
Somebody said you hung outside one of them and taking a shot.
No, we don't do that. We have the cameras mounted on the nose, but I love doing the car ones. The Top Gear stuff I enjoy doing. And if anybody saw Jeremy Clarkson's test of a Ferrari 458 last year, it was me on the camera for that. And we just have a ball. It's a very enjoyable, very unpredictable living.
You're ever going to come back to? I always think. I've always been in love with radio and TV and stuff, particularly radio, and I could never give it up. And would you ever want? Because I've heard you, and you're very good. Good. You're very good.
Well, I blush when you say that.
No, you're not. You're very, very good. So
I was listening to you when I was 9.
Would you come back into radio again if you had the chance?
I would love to come back into radio. It has to fit in with everything else that goes on in your life.
Yeah. So we've got to fit in around the helicopters and things like that.
Yeah, and also I've got to feel like I'm dedicated to it. I could never go on the radio. Radio is such an honest medium, right? You cannot tell a lie. You can't not tell the truth. And let me tell the truth here now. This place looks like a looted Comet store. This studio is full of wires that go nowhere with plugs hanging off the end, bits of old tape from the 1970s hanging around, and a Freeview receiver which looks like it was born in the steam age.
And a fish.
And a fish.
There's an inflatable fish that's up there. I don't. Nobody knows why that's there.
This is such a BBC place where the ceiling tiles have got stains on them because there's been a leak in the roof and nobody's done anything about it. So yes,
but
I want to come back to the truth of radio.
Well, that's what's so lovely about it, isn't it?
Yeah, but let's get back on the boats, Tony. I never had the joy of being a pirate radio DJ. And as I drove down here this morning trying to find BBC Berkshire on the dial, I heard every West London pirate station that's out there. They're all doing it, but not from boats. Although they could be today, couldn't they?
That's true. Yeah. So, well, Mike, thanks very much indeed for being with us today. Good luck with the helicopter. Well, you don't need it because it's going so well as well.
Well, it's going great. It's going great. The country's in a bad way, and we don't know whether it's going to be going great next year. But whatever, we get on with it, and we try and make the best of it.
And as far as the pirate radio is concerned, perhaps we could start off in a little rowing boat with a loud hailer and go off the coast of Brighton or something like that.
What about Thames Pirate Radio?
Just
playing back-to-back golden oldies and as few DJs as possible.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, you be one of the back-to-back golden oldies, obviously.
Mike, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us. Here's Sinead O'Connor. Nothing compares to you.